Hello there. Today I'm gonna kind of walk through how I do web development sort of for myself on a personal level, and how some of that can translate into your career or stuff like that. Today I'm just working on redoing my personal website, which is currently very old school and kind of like was ambitious for its time, but now is not quite what I'm thinking that I want. And my new sort of idea is to sort of have a more, I guess, sort of like dev shop, creative shop look, more simple, where basically you just have links on the left and content on the right, and then content progressively sort of grows from the right. Um, Obviously, I haven't really thought about mobile friendly right now just because this is a portfolio website, so I'm not super concerned about mobile friendly, other than obviously I'll have to kind of go backwards and adjust things for the mobile view. But ultimately, the site is really meant to be ingested on desktop. And kind of, I have right now set up a just very simple create React app in TypeScript mode. Um, Pretty straightforward. I've added Tailwind and Router, which are kind of sort of the basics of most sites today. And then the API will actually be kind of, I might use the WordPress backend, because right now there's actually like a secret blog in this site that is not being used. So I might leverage that or think about other things. But for now, this video is really just about showing how do you go from, paper to screen, or I guess Figma to pixel perfect of sorts, and just kind of, I don't know, it's pretty loose. And so sorry if you came for like a really intense tutorial. My videos are just going to be kind of like casual and chillin', so feel free to follow along or not. But I think the goal of this video is specifically how can I go from like basically a blank screen to something that kind of looks like this. Okay. All right, moving into it. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is set the colors for the app. And kind of a way to cheat it is I typically create a color file, and I have a constants folder. I use constants a lot in all my apps. And it just kind of declares some of the colors that I'm using. This is from, I essentially kind of went to a color generator and just kind of grabbed some I like. I'll probably definitely expand this in the future. But this is sort of like how you start with branding, because obviously, like with any design, you want to have some colors that sort of identify identify a custom look for yourself. Obviously, I could use the Tailwind like custom colors, which are pretty much, the rainbow, and I don't think anyone could tell the difference between these specific values and the ones in Tailwind. But I tend to, this is old school, just kind of like you always select a color palette for your site. So the way to kind of immediately inject it into Tailwind is basically you basically spread it into the color options. So colors, dot, 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 and I just realized I don't really export it as a thing, so maybe we should make it a const. I usually use the word color library. I don't know where that came from. Just kind of is like how I was used to like understanding this type of library that everyone used. And hopefully it will let me import it. What did I do wrong? Export cons, color library. Should work. Wow, okay. That is weird. I guess I had Tailwind set up completely wrong. And also Tailwind is like, don't use create React app, but I'm just gonna keep going. I had to move it to the dev dependencies for Tailwind, and I think that just solved everything since I am able to use classes now. But of course, this looks bad. So from the old school days of the internet, basically kind of React Tailwind has sort of undone the knowledge of sort of how web pages are basically styled. And so we can see that, people forget to style the body, which is sort of the base of the page. And instead, they go directly to sort of when the app injects elements. And so you'll always kind of have this flash of like ugly content. Obviously, one strategy is just in Tailwind in the CSS file, just like immediately like, hey, we should have some kind of background. Unfortunately, it's CSS, so you can't really import your, color files or whatnot. So you kind of end up having to have two sets of colors, and you don't want to do that. And you also don't generally want to avoid injecting your own CSS if you actually are using Tailwind, because kind of the goal is to keep it maintainable. I'll take this out for now. So the other goal would be just we need the full wrapper of this page to essentially have styling. Right now I'm using app as more of like a functional component to sort of define the routes and everything. And then, yeah. So kind of probably the ideal thing is kind of right now you can see that I think browser router is probably injecting its own div. So what if I do this? Nope. All right. So I guess you would just wrap the whole page in some kind of style, and that kind of did it. But clearly, like, I feel like one of these React router things is probably wrapping the elements, which is okay, but I personally don't prefer that. Probably it has to, just because it would break the DOM if it didn't. Let's play with the, oops. Oh, so I think obviously that's not what you want to do. You basically want to identify the top level of your full app and define it from there. So if we weren't overriding body, typically I think you would just give it height expand. Or not. Okay. My thought is I'm gonna do the proper thing and give ourselves some defaults here so that there is no flash of ugliness. And reference my background color here. And text should be white. Boom. And then we kind of can probably avoid doing this right now. Although it's going to come up later, we need a wrapper because I'm trying to do this sort of full screen thingy here. So yeah. Anyway, we're just talking about colors. We're good. Cool. So next I see that, oh, I had a wrapper class this whole time. So actually, you know what? I'm smart. We'll deal with that later. So actually, I was the cause of the div this whole time. So what I'm saying right now is I'm thinking is like I'm going to need to probably flex so that this thing is basically full screen. I wonder if you can do VH full for full screen. Let's see, what does Tailwind say about height? H full is just 100%, so we kind of want vertical height. Viewport height. H screen. So, okay, if you didn't do, boom, yeah. All right, if you don't do this, I guess you can use your wrapper class. I guess this is midnight blue, and I should add it to my colors. I'm actually using this VS Code plugin that adds colors to JavaScript, but then it adds colors to the, like, if you spell out a color, which is like a little redundant because I think it should only do that if the color is like inside quotes or something, right? So I think I need to like figure out how to change that. So you might see it. Yeah, it's I think it's literally anywhere there's a color in code, it's like adding it, even though this is not actually the same midnight blue. I think this is just like, I think it's just like a blue it chose. Or like, you can see these colors are different. So it's like the predefined dark green. And I'm just calling it dark green. So FYI, that's the confusion. Okay. So we got midnight blue. Someone's doing dark blue because earlier I tried to do it in the, I guess, the child / page component. And now that I've given the parent div the full height of the screen, every div below it 100% is height 100% is gonna basically allow it to span. So can't see anything. That's because you need the text to change. So I think it's like text white. Boom. Okay, now we can always continue. We're still seeing this nav. We'll get to the nav. It's ugly. It's just the default nav. So I think first I want to define in my design, basically kind of things are in columns. So I guess what traditionally would be the header would be essentially a left column here. And that was kind of a thing back in the day of like defeating the HTML5 DOM, because header is supposed to always be like at the top, and sort of like semantically that's what it means. So it's not really header if you throw it to the left. But we're in loosey goosey next gen web land where I guess semantics doesn't matter anymore and accessibility is out the window. So of course we still care about accessibility, and I'll definitely get to that in another video, but for now we'll just keep this as like quote unquote the header component, even though it's really like a left sidebar. So I think the first thing is we know that I'm just gonna give it, I'm gonna give this background just so that we can see this is like a different element. And actually, you know what? These buttons are annoying me. So I actually started my own button shared library of buttons, and we can see that no good. Just keep it like that. Cool. All right, so wrapper is the orchestrator of everything, is the parent, so we want to flex. And flex, Tailwind flex, pretty like everything kind of always kind of does what you expect it to do, but which means now everything's column because that's sort of the default. And yeah, now I want to sort of lay things out. There's kind of like a weird strategy of like which component do you tell to like define how wide it is, right? So typically I think the parent component that has the flex should always have the flex flex stuff, or flex the width, define the widths. And that's because I think eventually this parent component is going to orchestrate when the widths change, because like I want content to essentially like shrink to the left, and so I'm pretty sure the parent's gonna need to do that. But I always see a lot like the actual component, like maybe this header component actually itself will define its own width, but it kind of gets a little hairy as you move along. So I try to keep the child components like unaware of what it's supposed to do from the outside, and just define more styling, like colors and stuff like that, versus like I guess you would call this more layout than styling, even though layout is a style. And then this, I think this would be full, right? Because it's just pushing. So it's not exactly like I always feel like Flexbox is an exact science, because like what does it mean when this is 100% and this is 1/4? And you can look up the docs. There's probably an explanation of like the proportions or whatnot. I mean, because this doesn't make sense, right? How can one thing be full and one thing be a fourth? That's more than 100%. But Flexbox is it's flexing. It's magic in Webland. I'm okay with this right now. I think really it's probably 2/3 based on my design, or even up to like 1/2. But I'm okay. It's this is pixel perfect, but with the caveat of once you get into development, you see reasons why you don't want it exactly pixel perfect. And that's maybe because just it somehow feels or looks different. Okay. I think a thing I'm seeing that the header, when we give it flex, I think flex takes over height or something, and now you kind of really have to tell it to inherit the height. Yeah, so it's just the cost of doing business on the internet. Let's see. We can take away dark blue. I know there's this like fun border. Let's do the borders. So you can see I'm not actually doing the full border to the top and bottom. I'm kind of like imagining all of these things are kind of really loose, and the border is more of like a suggestive thing. So, this element might still be 100% to the top and bottom, but the border is its own thing. I also kind of imagine I want eventually to add like a ton of animations to this, or like kind of, responsive visual things. So I think the border might actually kind of pulse, or like it might grow and shrink. So I'm not going to set like the border exactly to this div. Probably a floating border element with a background. So it's like, chill out. So let's say it's height full, it's absolute, right 0, top 0, and then I think width 1. So what does that give us? Where'd it go? Oh, it's to the right of the page. So, sorry, we need to relative this. So I've created like a visual border, and it's just like a purely visual element. I like to do this instead of, images, because obviously why not leverage the actual browser. Yeah, and I actually want it 1 pixel wide, so I'll have to like look at that in the future. There. Cool. All right, we're just making 100% for now. Obviously, like it's not gonna be, but we'll get there. Okay. Let's add some content. Things are a little bare, so kind of you start mocking out the things. My name. This is like a subheader, but I don't really know what tag to use right now, so I'll use strong. I have another kind of visual element. This sort of horizontal line is going to move up and down or something like that to mark out sort of where you are in the page. So we'll do width full, height 1 pixel. I should probably spell these out in Tailwind instead of hard coding them. This might be absolute. We'll see. Because then I'm going to have to tell it exactly where to go all the time, which is kind of annoying. Right. Then we got some nav links. So for me, again, nav links are a constant file, so you spell them out somewhere. Yeah, I hate about pages. I don't know. I don't really know if I want it. The home page is the blog, or is it? I don't know. That's another thing I have to think about. Also, I don't even know how updated this blog's going to be, so I don't know if I really want to feature it above the portfolio. But anyway, constant file, it basically like, yeah, all your sort of like loosey-goosey content should live in some other file that is easily editable and gets auto-generated in the code where it needs to go. I mean, it's whatever. We'll get the GitHub link later. I don't even know if I want a contact page because I'm tired of spammers. Okay, so we got some stuff. I think that's everything for the left sidebar. So let's get this left sidebar going, and then I think that's a good pause before we look at other stuff. So the biggest thing, header. So I'm just going to do this ad hoc, meaning like I'm just going to throw in the Tailwind class names here, but I think ideally I would create essentially like a typography shared component that you can like reuse everywhere, but I just want to like show like, what's sort of a quick, what are your thoughts when you like go through this process? And we haven't even got the fonts yet because I'm using different fonts, but kind of like, can I lay this out to be as close as possible? And this is like thin, right? And then tracking wide. This one's like 3XL, 4XL even. I mean, I want my name out there. And then this is quite far from the top. Okay. Nav slider, I called it nav slider because I imagine that this kind of, this might slide back and forth when you hover over things, sort of as like a more background, more like, almost video game-ish kind of vibe. So, but really it's just the nav bar. Right now it's flex. I think we need to do columns. And then I'm letting the button component, I guess, kind of dictate things. This is not a great, like, button components are supposed to just be like standalone buttons. So when you try to shoehorn them as nav elements, you can sort of like diverge in sort of your intentions of what you're doing there. But I noticed that the text is quite large, and I'll probably use a more, I think a thinner like thing. Cool. Probably a lot more padding. Ooh, didn't like that. 5. Cool. And then things have to line up. So I'm doing this cheaty thing where I want the background to always kind of show, but so there's a little bit of like, I don't know what you call this, like parallax or like outside of. So like typically the edge of this text would be the edge of the div it's in or whatever element. And but if you want to do things like add a background to it, then the div would just cut off right here. So would cut off like that. So you kind of want, there's a few ways to pull this off. Like obviously this thing could just not be tied to the actual element, which kind of would make sense because if I'm going to have it move around, it won't be able to. So I probably wouldn't. But another way would be you could just like add a ton of padding to kind of fake it as if this button was like that big, and it kind of looks like that. But now I realize that I am going to move this around, I'm just going to like line everything up for now. These things are not lined up. P0. Well, PX0, PY4, probably. And then the overall header needs padding. A lot more padding. And, if this is a desktop site, if we go in desktop mode of, I don't know, one of these, like, oops, 50%. It's all relative, right? Because right now, I think Tailwind uses rems, which is the standard to use ems or rems to proportionalize things. But if this is like I want any browser to have, or any one screen to have relatively the same proportion of where this where the padding is, so that when you're on a bigger screen, it doesn't look like it's up here, but it's like still kind of floated in the middle. Then I'd probably look at viewport height or other things like that. But I think for now, we'll just like lay things out on a quote unquote typical, screen, which is fine. Most browsers, I mean, everyone has MacBook. You don't really need to even consult the like what is the most popular screen size, because if you know your audience, like there's only two things. Either they're on their phone, which everyone knows what resolution that is, or they're on probably a MacBook, or at least something the size of a MacBook, because pretty much all PC manufacturers have like also moved their resolutions to match it. And then nowadays, actually, a lot of PCs, I think the most popular one is 1080, like as a screen size for a laptop, and certainly for like a monitor. So, it's up to you, like how you want to decide. But anyway, that's my spiel on screen resolution. And yeah, let's get this a little closer to finish line, and then we'll pause. So I do notice that I'm using a different blue for the UI UX designer. And yeah, I know we'll talk about like color contrast. In a way, I might intentionally kind of have designery contrast, aka you can barely see it. But also, like, I don't really care for anyone to like necessarily read this. I think it's just like a nice. There's a lot of people like add texts that are just informative so that you know what you're doing, but it's like not something you want to call out. Let me add. I think the padding needs to be like some kind of. Let's see how big. Tailwind goes to. I think it only goes to like. Oh, dang! Tailwind goes to like 20. Tailwind kind of, it seems super arbitrary as to like the sizing that they give, but actually, yeah, 20 looks great. And even on a 1080, that'd be fine with that. Cool. So it's not the same font, that's okay. I can live with it. And yeah. Oh, I should probably move my little line to 40. Interesting. I'm seeing that, I think because this is living in the padding, my little line, I think I have to give it an apps, like position it exactly. And yeah, it's not gonna be full. So anyway, cool. Okay. Then all right, we'll pause there. Thanks.